Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome back to Drums and Drams. My name is Cameron, and today we have another episode of Quick Sips. Quick Sips are unedited, shorter reviews of samples sent in by subscribers from patrons. Focuses on niche bottlings or just other whiskeys that I don't want to necessarily give full reviews to. So the focus on today's episode is this batch number 17 from Chattanooga Whiskey's experimental distillery. And this is their Apricot Brandy finished straight bourbon whiskey. So let's talk about it very quickly before we get into the tasting here. If you see me looking down, I have their website pulled up on my computer screen down here so I can give you a couple of these details. It's funny, they say alt malt meets alt brandy. And that's very true. We'll get into it. It says crafted to highlight the fruit-forward characteristics of an alternative grain mash bill, including wheat, spelt, and oat malts. This innovative experiment is finished in rare Turkish apricot brandy barrels for over 3 months. This result highlights the bold synergy between an inventive high malt bourbon and a vibrant fruit brandy finish. Okay, so the mash bill here: yellow corn, pale wheat malt, pale barley malt, pale spelt malt, and naked oat malt. So a lot of very specific things going on there, and I don't know the percentages. This is 102 proof or 51% ABV, so a very solid ABV. The age is 3 years and 6 months with a finishing time of 3 months in those Turkish apricot brandy barrels. They've also, I believe these apricot brandy barrels were 25 gallon. It says 53 gallon was used and 25 gallon, and I would assume the 53 was the initial maturation before transferring, but I can't know that for sure. So I think that's all we need to say. Yeah. Again, love everything about Chattanooga Whiskey. This is an interesting one. I have tasted this a few times at this point, so I'm curious to see how this will fare on today's episode. This has been sitting out for about 10 minutes now. Let's see what we get on the nose. Whew. Okay, so right away, it has this very, very distinct craft grain aroma. For me, it reminds me a lot of Woodinville. Woodinville has never sat right with me for whatever reason, and a little bit of the Spirits of French Lick Matty Gladden also has a little bit of this craft grain taste or smell, but it's not nearly as pronounced as this. This is very just different. I mean, there's not a great way to describe it because it is just fundamentally different. It does not smell like a typical bourbon by any means, or a typical finished bourbon for that matter. I'll try to focus the review away from that, though. I want to say that right now. I'll try to not harp on that too much and just talk about what it does well and what it is, as opposed to what I feel like it should be. Yeah, the grains really soften this thing up. Like, the amount of spice you get on here is not a typical sort of bourbon spice. It's very rounded because of these other grains. It almost has this aroma like an orange curacao finish. It reminds me of that Bardstown Distillery, that orange curacao barrel finish. You know, it's very, very sweet on the nose. Yeah, liqueur. I mean, that's the biggest thing I get from this. That apricot brandy is really coming off as this liqueur type characteristic. Very vanilla forward on the nose. You could convince me there is some oak here, surprisingly, based on the young age, the very sweet finishing, all of that, and the different malts. You could convince me that there is a little bit of oak on the nose. Yeah, just overall very sweet. I don't know. Caramel might not even be the right word. Brown butter, like I'm not sure, but it's very distinct and less apricot and more orange curacao, at least on the nose from me. So let's check this out on the palate. 102 proof, so it should be a pretty vibrant whiskey here. So let's see what we get. So, ooh, weird, very weird. Just a strange freaking whiskey. If you let it sit on your palate, not rinsing it around, if it just sits, it is completely flat, very stagnant, not a lot going on. But the minute you swallow, there is a really nice spice rush. It's almost like you have like oranges and I can get the apricot on the palate now for sure. It's almost like you took these fruits and you just added all of these sorts of spices to them. It's very weird. Still, it's kind of like too sweet, overly sweet on the palate for me, as the nose would have suggested. But on the back end now, you do get a little bit of this oak, a little bit of this leather characteristic, and it's actually more drying than I would have expected. I've got to say, as this bottle is opened up, it has sort of subdued a little bit of the sweetness. It has gotten better since it has opened up, but yeah, I don't know. It's still a little bit weird for me. All right, let's do another sip. A lot of those spiced fruit characteristics. I don't know if there's any rye in here. Let me look back on the mash bill. No rye. So the spice coming through has got to be from the, from the wood, probably. I mean, you're still going to get some spice from these other grains in the mash bill, but very interesting. I don't know how I feel about this. It's really just sort of this white pepper spice going on. It's not distinctly flavored like baking spices or anything, but the Apricot Brandy has really sort of taken over this whiskey in particular. It's got that craft taste. I paid $70 for this, which is way too much now that I'm really digging into it. I don't know how to feel about this. This is kind of a weird episode. It's definitely strange. I think some people are really going to enjoy this, especially if you're looking for something that's not if you're looking for something off profile, if you're sick and tired of bourbon and you want to try something a little bit new, this might be the thing for you to experiment with. I'm not even sure if it's still available at this point. But at $70, I think it's a little steep for what it is. It's almost like you have this very craft bourbon taste, but then you also have like this insane amount of sweetness, and they haven't quite intermingled enough, so they're distinct enough to pull apart on the nose and the palate. That spice is the most refreshing part of this, and I don't know exactly where that's coming from, whether it's the mash bill or the additional oak and wood influence in here from the finishing cask. But overall, it seems a little bit disjunct, a little bit out of whack, and not quite my thing. But I could see people enjoying this. Honestly, I could imagine this as like a mixer or something you would almost use in a cocktail to spice something up and make it a little bit more interesting. Yeah, I think that's all I've got. I don't have much more to say about this. A very unique whiskey, not up my alley. Therefore, I can't really suggest it. And the fact that it's very limited means it's probably gone by now. But yeah, swing and a miss for me. But everything else Chattanooga does, including the port cask, which I just recently tasted and reviewed, that port cask is phenomenal. The 111 is phenomenal. I'm really excited about what they're doing there. I love that they have the experimental distillery. This one, a little bit too experimental for my taste. So that's all I've got. If you enjoyed the video, please drop a like below. If you want to subscribe to the channel, hit that bell notification button to find out when new content is coming out, when I'm going live, which is at least once a week. And if you want some exclusive behind-the-scenes access to Drums and Drams, especially if you've watched a few videos and you enjoy what you're seeing, I do have a Patreon page. You can check that out in the description below. I've got a link down there. We're building a solid community there with a lot of monthly exclusive content. But that is all I have. I will finish this video off with one final sip. Let's see if this gets a little bit better of this Apricot Brandy finished Chattanooga whiskey. So cheers, and I'll see you next time on Drums and Drams.